I just watched the movie Novocaine, not to be confused with the 2001 movie about a dentist. This is a rom-com beat-em-up movie that'll make you want to buy extra Band-Aids. Hey guys, let's talk about the brand new movie Novocaine, and by the way, I got my Batman badass leather jacket on, and it probably came from a pile of recycled trash bags in China, but I like it. This film stars Jack Quaid, who's been in one of the more entertaining films thus far of 2025, Companion, which I quite enjoyed, and he is a bank manager in this film who's very mild-mannered, but he's suffering from this rare genetic disorder where he's impervious to pain. But when the girl of his dreams is taken hostage in a bank robbery, he's forced to step up and save the day. Now let's talk about what works in this movie. I've always been a sucker for the beat-em-up genre in movies and games. There's something so satisfying about watching a hero fight their way from point A to point B, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. The movie Novocaine feels like a mix of Nobody meets Baby Driver with some clear influences from John Wick. When it comes to the first act of this movie, I think it is paced perfectly. When you have an action comedy movie, you don't need a runtime of 3.5 hours. Less is always more. Keep the energy alive, and this movie just goes. But I liked how this movie explained Nathan Cain, and yes, that is his name, Nathan Cain, Novocaine, just like my name is John Flickinger, the Flick Pick. Yes, in fact, that is my real last name. His character has had this genetic condition since birth, and he's constantly accidentally hurting himself. For example, in the opening scene of the movie, he burns his hand with some coffee, and then third-degree burns start to develop, but it's just another day at the office for him. And another thing that he has to deal with is he cannot chew food, because he lives in fear of accidentally biting off his tongue and swallowing it and choking to death. And there's also an interesting backstory that relates to tattooing, and I thought that was a nice touch for the character that gave him a little more substance throughout the movie. One thing I thought to myself when I was watching this movie in the theater was, the character Nathan Cain feels like a grounded superhero that could exist in the series The Boys, which also stars Jack Quaid. He just comes across like a low-tier superhero, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm glad we got it, but I could see that happening in the Boys series. Let me know if you feel the same way down below. And in some ways, this is the perfect date night movie. It blends romance, action, comedy all together into a super easy and enjoyable movie to watch. The love interest played by Amber Mythhunter, I think I said that right. You may have noticed her from the movie Prey, which came out a couple years ago, or at least that's where I first noticed her as an actress. And when it comes to her character in this film being the love interest / damsel in distress, I bought into her chemistry with Jack Quaid's character, and they felt like two people that would actually hang out and talk to one another and develop a romance at some point. And there's one scene that takes place in a diner where I think it really sets this up. It doesn't feel overly forced, and it feels like they do have chemistry in that scene. So I liked her in the movie. One of the best aspects of Novocaine is how Nathan's pain tolerance gives him a tactical advantage. He's not some kung fu master, I don't know what that was, but his character can take a serious ass whooping throughout the movie, and I quite enjoyed the way that this movie played with that concept, because there's one fight scene that takes place in a kitchen that involves a deep fryer. I will just say, I winced when I watched this scene. It was utterly disgusting, but I loved every single second of it. There's one thing I want to give this movie a lot of credit for, and that is it explains how a regular guy could endure a full day of violence and mayhem. And it makes sense. I almost feel like the writing of this movie was better than it needed to be for the genre that it exists in, and I'll explain what I'm talking about. Yeah, throughout the movie, they do give you slivers of his backstory and do explain how he is capable of certain things, and since he grew up with this genetic disorder and constantly always getting hurt, he's gotten really good at giving himself first aid, so whenever he does have a gaping gash or a burning hand that's crusted and falling off, or what have you, he knows how to take care of himself to keep going. And so I just think little things like that are nice. It's like, oh, you actually explained something in a movie. Thank you. That makes me care more. And speaking of a man who feels no pain but wants to feel love, maybe you can relate. I don't know where I'm going with this, but yeah, here's the sponsor of the video, and I'll be right back. Oh, hey, I didn't see you back there. We all have wants, needs, and desires. It's human nature. So why not take the red pill and see just how deep the rabbit hole goes at Tantally.com. With a massive selection to fill any void, or any void to fill any selection, there's something for everyone, and that might just include one lucky someone watching right now. Oh, you know who you are. And also, they lead the industry with products that are soft, but much more realistic, which will give you that real-life immersive experience that you can revisit
again and again and again.
And it's all delivered to your door with discreet packaging. My nosy neighbors are none the wiser. Use promo code FlickPick for 12% off at checkout. Click the link to Tantally.com down below. Now, let's talk about what doesn't work in this movie. The villains in this movie are very meh. They're sort of just there. They almost feel obligatory. There's no charisma or charm. There's nothing really memorable. I almost don't even want to talk about them, but for the sake of the video, I feel like I have to. The best way to describe the main antagonist is he comes across like the secondary henchman that you would see in a 2005 straight-to-DVD movie that you could only find in the $5 Walmart bargain bin, and you only see it because you're there late at night buying some frozen pizza because you're incapable of feeding yourself or cooking a real nutritious meal, so you go to Walmart and you pick up this straight-to-DVD movie. It's right beside the Steven Seagal selection, and you go, oh, this looks terrible. I'll probably never watch that because the cover looks like it was photoshopped from a 9-year-old kid who just learned how to use Photoshop yesterday. Yeah, that's the best way I can explain the main antagonist of this movie. And when it comes to movies like this, I always feel they're better served with a charismatic villain who can chew up the scenery and feels like a real threat, but also comedic at the same time. At least make me care about watching them on the screen rather than being completely bored by them. And speaking of that villainistic role, it's in the third act you get the majority of this character, and I feel like that's also the weakest portion of this entire film. It's the third act. You go on this journey where Jack Quaid's getting the shit beat out of him. It's fun, it's exciting, it's bloody. And then by the third act, it's sort of underwhelming. I was hoping that the stakes would feel more elevated by the end of this film, and I understand it's a very modest film, so shooting it in one small location was probably budget friendly. Oh yeah, there's one other thing I need to mention, and the movie does make a self-reference nod to this, but throughout the course of this chaotic day where there's a bank robbery, kidnappings, and murders taking place, throughout this entire city, there's only 2 detectives that are doing anything. And I get that the film makes a nod to it, but at the same time, it sort of took me out of it ever so slightly. And hey, listen, I understand that this movie has a very modest budget of $18 million. And yes, that is somewhat modest in today's standards of filmmaking in Hollywood. But it's like, come on, you couldn't just hire 10 more background actors to dress up like cops to walk around in the background throughout some of these scenes? I don't know. Call me crazy. It just sort of ruined the immersiveness of taking anything serious throughout the movie. Now, here are my final flicking thoughts on the film Novocaine. The best way to describe Novocaine is it's sort of the perfect date night movie. It has a rom-com vibe, it has action, it has mayhem, it has some gore, it has a whole bunch of levity to tie all of these things together, and most importantly, it is funny and easy to consume. I'm going to give Novocaine, that right there. Did you like the way that felt? It's an action flick that knows what it is and delivers on the promises that the trailers make. So I recommend checking it out. It's a movie that you might not remember in 20 years, but it's a good time at least once. As always, guys, leave your thoughts, your opinions down below. If you've seen the movie, what did you think about it? Or what is your favorite beat 'em up movie in that genre? If I had to pick one, I'd probably go with The Warriors. Oh, I love it. And as always, thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, make sure you check out my Mickey 17 review or my top 10 movies from 2024 video right here. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you subscribe. That way, I can see you next time.